back to Book Buzz with Jen and Payne, a podcast where we talk about romance books, our current reads, and we also have the pleasure of sitting down and talking with some of our favorite authors and chatting with them about their amazing books.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This past week, let's see. I feel like I've read a lot, but at the same time, I kind of don't remember what I read. But I did remember reading The Dragon's Bride by Katie Robert. And oh my gosh, guys, I have to say this is the first book I've read that's a monster romance. And oh man, it was
it's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, right?
I
thought that's what I saw online, like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast.
Well, it is kind of like that because she have a contract with the demon, and then she was auctioned off to go marry the dragon. And so, yeah, it was totally not what I was expecting, but oh my gosh, it was good, but it was crazy steamy, really steamy. So that one releases on the 29th. So if you love monster romance books, or if it's something new to you and you want to read it, then dive into it because it is good. I love Katie's books. And I'm currently reading Say It's Forever by A.L. Jackson, and I am loving it. You guys know I love single parent. So that one currently reading, and I am going to finish it tonight. So besides that,
I finished that one. Mm-hmm. I'm currently reading Fallen Embers by Catherine Cowles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm currently reading that one. So I'll finish that tonight too. Actually, maybe not tonight, maybe tomorrow, because I'm going to binge watch Bridgerton.
Yeah. So, you can let me know how that one goes.
Started like the full series. So I'm watching from season 1. Right now I'm in season 1, episode 3. So that's what I'm going to do. Hold on. I'm back. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to binge watch season 1 and season 2. I am about to like brew some coffee and sit and watch it. And then tomorrow I'll finish the book. But that's what I'm going to do this weekend. It's Bridgerton time. I'm going to miss Simon, but we shall see how this season is.
Yeah. So today we have the pleasure of having USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author Jewel E. Ann on our podcast. I've been dying to talk to her about her books because
you've been wanting on here since last year.
Yes. Like I seriously, like I cry every time when I read her books. Like even when it's like more rom-com, like Perfectly Adequate, that one was more rom-com, but I still ended up crying. And the Fisher Duet, oh my gosh, I bawled my eyes out for that one. For A Place Without You. So I can't wait to talk to her. And she has written some of the most very emotional and unforgettable characters and stories.
Can I just say, I am so excited to talk to her because I'm not the type of person who picks up a lot of rom-coms. Mm-hmm. I like my angsty emotional books, mm-hmm. But I have to say, What Lovers Do is by far one of my top favorite rom-com. Mm-hmm. And I guess because it's so like awkward, funny, like still kind of romantic, and it makes me like cool because of Shep. So I love this book so freaking much. Plus I love how bright the cover is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It stands out so much. So I loved it. If you haven't picked it up yet, pick it up, y'all. Pick it up.
Yes. So she recently released What Lovers Do, and it is a friends to lovers that will have you laughing, but also shedding a tear or two. We are excited to talk to her and get to know a little bit more about her writing process. So sit back, grab some coffee. It is a long one today, but it was amazing. And hope you enjoyed today's episode.
It's such an honor to have you here with us today, Jewel. It's seriously, we love your books. You're always making us cry. And then, especially after reading What Lovers Do, which was so different than what you released last year, we loved it. It was amazing. And how are you doing today?
Well, thanks for having me. This is kind of an honor. I'm doing well, thanks. I'm actually not home. I'm in Tulsa on a writing getaway with my best friend. So I'm sitting in a Verbo here talking to you guys. So I'm excited to be here. How about you guys? How are you doing today?
It's 10 o'clock here, so I am barely getting up since it is the weekend.
Oh, of course.
It's going good. It is the weekend. I felt like this week went by super slow for some reason.
Mm.
I don't know why, but it's going good. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. We recently finished reading What Lovers Do, so we have so much stuff to talk to you about that. But we did want to start off with getting to know you a little bit better. Could you tell us a little bit how you got into writing? What pushed you to start writing romance?
Sure. Boredom is probably the best answer. I not wasn't a writer originally. I was a dental hygienist by trade, and I enjoyed writing when I was in school, but I didn't do a lot of it. I've always enjoyed reading, not necessarily just romance, just all kinds of genres. So after quitting my job as a dental hygienist and having 3 kids and helping with the family business, I had some time on my hands. And so I started writing. I actually had a friend who was reading more of the spicy romance novels, and kind of she's the one who got me into that. And I thought, oh, this is different. So I just sat down and started writing a book. I didn't know if I was going to publish it. I didn't know anything about self-publishing. I knew nothing about book blogs. I had never read an ebook. When I started writing, I had not read an ebook, didn't have a Kindle. I got all of my books from either just the bookstore or over at the library. So I stumbled into this world and muddled my way through it. That's where I'm at now.
Has it always been romance? What led you to writing? What book did you read that you said, I want to give this a try, a try to write my own romance?
Well, I think because I write a little bit more, at least part of, yes, my books, I have some explicit scenes in them. I think it was when I realized that some of the books, after 50 Shades of Grey came out and, Sylvia Day books and everything, that there was this curiosity of, well, this is a different type of romance. And so I just started reading all the books that I could find, and wasn't like I'm going to go write a book, but it was just a different type of romance that caught my attention. Of maybe it was just a hormonal time in my life after 3 kids. I don't know, but so for me it was then my first series is probably the Holy News series, is my most explicit of all my books. I call them my sex books. and at the time I was going also through a very tree hugger stage in my life, and I had stopped eating meat and done all this stuff, and I'm like, what if there was a romance novel with a person who owns a vegan restaurant? And at the time where we live at, there's this woman who had actually opened this first kind of vegan restaurant in our area, all plant-based food, and I thought kind of what she was doing was cool. And I'm like, what if I could make it cool? And what if I could make it sexy and write this romance? And she makes this guy. That's how it was just kind of born. I think a lot of authors do talk about what kind of spurs them on as they consume a lot of books, but then they're like, well, this type of story hasn't been told. And so you want that. And so if you want it, then you try to write it. And I just sat down and started writing, and I had to go back because of my age and look at, okay, when I was in English, how am I supposed to, punctuate, to do all this dialogue? And actually the dialogue for me, I mean, the punctuation I had to review, but my books are very dialogue heavy. So I've hit points in my career where I've thought, should I be writing screenplays instead of novels? Because I'm just all about writing dialogue. But yeah, that was kind of my start, was just, hey, can I write something sexy? I've got time on my hands. So it started out as a hobby. I self-published it, didn't think anybody would read it. 3 or 4 people read it, but I kept writing.
Well, I'm glad you kept writing, because your books are amazing.
Thank you.
So what is the most surprising thing you discovered while writing your books?
I think the emotional investment into it, like I knew I was emotionally invested writing books. Like when I wrote my first two books, I said I left my heart in the first of the duet and I left my soul in the second book of the duet. And I've been emotionally invested in reading other books. Yes, books can make me cry and you get invested in them, but when you write the book yourself versus reading it, it is a different type of investment. It's like I care about my friend's child because she's my friend and that's their child, and then there's my child. So it's that, and then putting your child out into the world. And I didn't imagine having that connection with it, and which makes publishing sometimes scary because no matter how tough somebody thinks they are, we're all emotionally vulnerable. So,
and when because you've been writing, I mean, you've written so many amazing books. What's the most difficult part for you when you're writing and then publishing? Like, does it get easier as more books you publish, or is it still the same, nerve-wracking experience or difficult?
It does get easier as you go. It's the writing part's the easy part. It is letting it go into the world. It's a harder part. I'm like a lot of authors who I get to the point where I don't sit down and just actively ever read my reviews of books. I've had to realize that because it's such an emotional investment for me that I just can't go reading every review. I read reviews if somebody sends me a link or something like that, and I feel like they want me to read a review, which is 99.9% of the time, it's a positive review. They're not sending me the I hated your book ones. And there has to be this detachment that you have, and that's hard to begin with. That's hard because writing is personal. Like I say, for me, that writing is very therapeutic. Not just with the characters, but I feel like I leak so many of my own emotions and life experiences into my books in small ways. So when you put them out into the world, it feels very vulnerable. That part always is there, but it does get easier. You get a thick skin. You learn to like write the book, put it out, and move on to the next book. Like, of course, What Lovers Do is out, but I have like 2 or 3 other things that I'm working on that I'm able to focus on at the same time. So, I mean, the process gets easier. You get better at it, not only just doing the technical part of it, but I think emotionally you get better at not feeling like it's the end of the earth if a book doesn't do really well. I feel like early on, you're like, everything is invested this. This is my success or failure. You just learn to put it out there and move on. And I feel like I've become more of a seasoned writer in the sense that I know that the craft matters to me, and I want to feel like everything I put out is as best as I can write at that time. And if you feel that way as a writer and you put that book out, it helps you no longer care if there's some negativity with it. Like you're like, that's the best I could do at this time. Perfect? No, it'll never be perfect. So easier, yes, but just a little easier.
So, we've wanted to ask you, since every single time we read your books, we either cry or like laugh, but then most of the times we cry. So do you plan on making your books emotional, or does it come as you write?
No, I don't set out to do it. I mean, even like What Lovers Do is definitely, I think, my most straight up rom-com that I've ever written. And I had to really focus on like, don't go there, when the goal is not to make people cry. And making people cry is never my goal. But like I said, because writing is so therapeutic to me, and I feel life is this mix of emotions where there's that fine line between when you are laughing and when you are crying. That's the whole somebody dies, but you have that person who gets the giggles at the funeral, that type of thing. I was even like in some song or one, I always laughed like she's a giggle at a funeral. And I'm like, that's very real in life, these, these opposite emotions are actually very close together. So I don't set out to make people cry, but I also feel like I want my stories, for the most part, to impact somebody. Maybe only one person, right? It's never going to be everybody. And I feel like there's this emotional connection that I'm trying to make with somebody that I don't even know who this is until I put my book out there. And I can't write 90, 100,000 words and have it be a story and not have probably some of it be emotional, because I think love is emotional, and I'm writing a love story, and love is laughter, and love is crying, and love is getting angry and wanting to smack somebody. Love is stupidity. When you read books and you get angry at characters because they're being stupid or they're being immature, or, the list goes on. And for me, I'm like, they're being real. They're being real because we're all stupid. We're all immature. We're all insecure at times, but in other times that we're confident, and we all make mistakes. And so for me, I always aim at just making my characters, for me, feel real and authentic. And I think if you hit that goal, you're going to probably make somebody cry, because also what makes people cry is when something touches them. Like, even if we don't realize it, like even when we see like a character that we don't like, sometimes if it draws out a really strong reaction to us, from us, it's usually because we actually sometimes see part of ourselves in them, and it's scary, and you don't want to admit that. But when I see somebody who like really hates one of my characters, I'm like, it's a little reflective, maybe. Yeah, not setting out to make you cry, but life is emotional.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there are times when you read like certain scenes, and those scenes, like, as I've said, like, I feel like I cry all the time, like when I'm reading a book, and it's like, because you do put yourself in those shoes. It's like, this could happen, and it makes it more real when you're reading a book, that you're so invested in the story that you put yourself in that situation. And I feel like that emotion, like, it transpires way more than just words that you're reading, because you're putting yourself in that place.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. That's why I always find it interesting. I love buying the Kindle copy of my books. I love that Kindle like shows, or not just my books, any books. I love that Kindle shows like what other people have highlighted, and you can go through, because you feel like you connect with readers, and you're like, look at, like, because it'll show you even the number, like 500 people that have highlighted this area in a book. And you feel like, I haven't even met these other people, but like you connect with them because you're like, oh, we're emotionally feeling that same thing. And yeah, it's a very cool feeling, not just writing a book, but like when I read other books and you hit even like a passage and you read it 3 and 4 times, you're like, oh my God, that resonates with me. It's a very cool feeling. I love that about the book world is we're like connected on a real emotional level, because especially in the romance world, because romance is so emotional.
Have you ever cried while writing one of your books?
Oh God, yes. All the time. All the time. My husband has walked in on me so many times. And I'm quickly wiping my tears, and he gives me a look. He's like, you've been crying. Yes, I've been crying. Probably the hardest. I sometimes know when I'm getting ready to write an emotional scene, and I'm actually kind of dreading it, and I know that I don't want interruptions. And so there's been times I've just left my house just far enough to like drive across the street late at night to like the elementary school parking lot, so I can sit in my car and finish this scene, because I know I'm going to sob. And I've like literally, like, my heart hurts, and I get home, and like in my Jag and Jill series, the end of the second book is probably one of the ones that I've just sobbed the most. And it took me a while, even when I was done. I just stayed there because I wanted my eyes to like be a little less swollen when I showed up home, and it didn't look like somebody had, done something to me. But yeah, and that's like, you've hit a mark too. I'm like, okay, I've made myself cry. But it's even with the laughing. So what lovers do, but comedy is a little bit different, because everyone has a different sense of humor, for sure. And I totally respect that. But what lovers do, it's fun when you can make yourself cry, but it's also fun when you can make yourself giggle. The whole, as crazy it is, you're like, oh, I cracked myself up. I'm so self-entertained.
So I remember when you first released Jersey 6.
Yeah.
And when I picked up the book, I was like, hey, this is, if I remember correctly, it was in third person, correct?
Yeah, I have a few that are.
Yeah, okay. So what do you find easier, in third person or first person?
I can write either just fine. I can fall into the groove. For me, I'm this way as a reader and a writer. Because I think it gets frustrating when you have people that like, I can't read third person. And I get it. It's hard if you've read a whole lot of first person and maybe you're going to third person. I've read so many books and I'm aged enough that I can read both. For me, it's not, do I like writing one or the other? I can write them both. It's what does the story require? And I feel like some stories are cheated by trying to do them all in first person. Even if you're doing multiple points of view, it's got a weird choppy flow to it. You're going this person to this person to this person, and you're trying to get all of this in there, especially stories who have a lot of characters that are like you have two main characters, but some of the other ones are like really involved. Like my Jack and Jill series was that way. Jersey 6, I wanted you to kind of have like a little bit of an out because it's way more thriller mystery. I like the thriller mysteries to have a little bit of that outside looking in because like, some books you're like keeping the secret from just the characters, but the reader knows the secret. They're, nothing's the reader, but when you're trying to keep stuff from a reader, using third person to me is just such an easy tool. And for me, it flows better. Like I've read first person, like suspense, and I've struggled with certain books because I'm like, oh, this, like it needed to be third person. And I know they wrote it in first because they're like trying to appeal to a first person audience, but the book itself would be better that way. And that's like the Jack and Jill series is in third person because it has so many characters and it's romantic suspense and mystery. And I'm trying to think, isn't this terrible? So my life series, I don't even remember. I think I wrote my life series in third person. It's the life you stole. Oh, is it in third person? I don't have it with me. I think it is. Isn't that terrible? I wrote it so long ago. But it's not about which do I like. It's what does the story call for? And sometimes I know writing in third person, I will not lose readers. I don't think that readers are just going to leave me if I write one book in third person. They just might not read it. It's kind of like if you just write a book about cheating, you're just going to have some people that don't read it. And that's fine. Like, that writing it, but you still know you are going to have an audience for it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to plot a book? Like, how do you plot your books? Because like you said, what Lovers Do, it's more of a rom-com versus the duet that you released last year. Like I feel like that one was very emotional and it was like, it had our hearts tugging. Like, how do you plot your stories to be like, okay, this one's going to be a very emotional one versus I'm going to make this one that's a rom-com?
Right. So, I mean, I usually know what I'm going, usually, not always. I usually know what I'm going for when I do write books. Like, yeah, when What Lovers Do, hands down, I'm like, I'm writing a rom-com. I just need to stay on course here and not like turn it into something angsty. Like, I wanted a light rom-com. And so, and as far as like actual plotting, when it comes down to like the book, I don't plot much. I have a vague idea. I don't usually know the ending. I grab some character names and I sit down, very Stephen King like, because he doesn't plot really anything either. And I just sit and write and I let the characters tell me the story. The whole spooky voices in my head. Sometimes I sit down to write a book and maybe I think it's going to be a rom-com, but it changes. Maybe it turns into a dramedy. So I don't always know what direction I'm going. Like, my romantic suspense books, they always start out as romantic suspense. Like, I don't go into it. I mean, and all my books have a little bit of humor to it just because I'm odd like that. But I go into romantic suspense knowing that it's going to be gut-wrenching. You're going to have a killer plot twist. No pun intended. But there's just I go into it that way. And those are probably my suspense books when it comes to the actual book itself. I probably plan a little bit more because I want to know what some of the plot twists are going to be, but I don't, like, there's authors who literally sit down and write chapter per chapter what's going to happen and they outline it. That's not me. I feel like it's stifling to my creativity because I'm writing in a box. Like, I can't do that. In my book, I wrote Idle Bloom was one of those, like, my fourth book that I wrote. And there's this door in Oliver's house and you don't know what's behind it. It's a locked door. And early on, because that was one of my first books where I actually let some beta readers kind of read along while I was writing it. Like, I'd write some chapters and send it to them. I don't know that anymore. I just write the book and then send it to them. But as they're reading along with me writing, they would say, "What's behind the door? What's behind the door?" And I go, "I don't know, but I can't wait to find out." Like, I had no idea what I just knew he was going to have a secret behind that door, and you don't find out. And I didn't know until I wrote the chapter where you find out what's behind the door. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm very situational in what I write, but you
threw a little bit of like Monica and Friends where they have, I don't know if you guys ever seen that episode where there's like a secret door and everybody's like, "What's behind that door?"
Yeah. But it's junk. Exactly. Yeah. So I think really for writing for me and to feel like the story is its best, I have to be flexible and to have a direction that I'm going, but not necessarily know what path I'm going to take to get there. And I don't always know the final destination. I know writer friends of mine, they're like, "Oh yeah, I totally know the ending and the epilogue before I ever start my book." And I'm like, "Really?" Like, I'm so impressed by that.
So how long does it usually take for you to write a book?
I like 3 months is a good number for me. That's just the writing part. That's not going to beta readers. That's not editing. That's just me playing around with the book for 3 months. Yeah.
For like, okay, so when we were talking about the whole rom-com versus the more suspenseful, heart-tugging scenes, I've always wondered, how do you guys, or how do you, like with lovers do? There were some scenes there I was just like laughing. I was like, "Oh my God, this situation is either awkward or it's so funny," or you will get frustrated, but then what was going on was really funny as well. So how do you plan and plot those funny moments? Like, do you already know what scenes you're going to write? Like, okay, I'm going to add a joke here, or this situation is going to come here. Like, how do you come up with those very funny scenes?
They're organic when I'm writing them. Like, I'm just in the scene. Like, at the beginning of that book, I'm there with her remembering her past. I actually did the very part where she remembers going back and having, the garter snake and stuff like that. I actually added that after the fact, but I originally just started where she's in her place. Jimmy goes looking for her in her purse for some money to run to the drugstore. And the whole scene I'm just writing a dialogue. It's a movie in my head. It's an imaginary back and forth in my head. And I feed off of each line is what it is. I imagine what she would say. And then just in the moment, if I think he's going to come back with something incredibly stupid, with Jimmy, it usually is, or super witty or whatever. And it's not like somebody who's a comedian and they have writers and they're writing out these jokes, which most comedians originally didn't have. They were their own writers, or they just stood up and they just told jokes. And I'm not really, I have a great sense of humor in the fact that I laugh at everything. I can laugh at myself the most. Rom-com doesn't come, I think rom-com comes a little natural to me, but I'm afraid of rom-com more than anything, because with humor comes the increased chance of offending somebody, because at the heart of humor, it's usually at somebody's expense. And that's, in the past years, whether it's been just with like social matters and COVID and all this stuff, I've noticed, and even watch interviews with like famous comedians and stuff, and they feel like their craft has been like muzzled in the sense where you have to watch everything you say, and you can say the wrong thing and offend people. And it's never, I don't want to say never. Most writers or comedians are not setting out to offend anybody, but it can happen. And we are a very hyper aware society of this now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just makes the art of comedy really difficult. So this book was kind of scary for me, but I didn't plan out any of them. And I mean, I have the characters kind of stumbling around some political correctness in the book. And all of the things that happen are usually kind of real in my life or something that I've experienced. Like, I know people who have had rental property and had to like go to court to get squatters kicked out of their rental property. There's the funny part with this book. I've had so many people. I'm very awkward sometimes, the way that Sophie would be, but at the same time, big-hearted. Like somebody would say, probably to a fault. Like I let people step on me because I'm kind to a fault, and I'm like, I'll take that fault. If that's the biggest fault in my life, I'll take, kind to a fault. Towards the end of the book, she visits her dad, and there's a dietary issue. I won't spoil this for anybody. And I've had so many people message me and said they were laughing so hard, but part of them didn't believe that I went there, that I allowed that kind of scene in a romance novel. And I said, well, as somebody who's probably been on every cleanse in the world, I was speaking very much from first experience of how embarrassing things can be. And you're like, people have like in romance novels, it's never sexy to talk about bodily functions, but I'm like, I got to the scene. I did not plan the scene out or anything. I literally was writing it in the moment, and I was like snorting. I was laughing so hard because, and I may have had people message me about that scene. I'm being so vague. Anybody listening to this, like, what is she talking about? But I've had people that are like, I don't even go into the bathroom. Even I've been married so many years. I had somebody come in that I've been married so many years, and I still, when I go into the bathroom, always like shut the door, turn on the fan, use the faucet. Like, there's just certain things that it doesn't matter how in depth you are in a relationship, that just you don't want to share with your significant other. So I literally feed off of from one line to another going through the book. I wish I could say I planned it out. I don't. I just flying by the seat of my pants.
And I feel like Sophie got herself in some situations that I felt like I was her, and I was experiencing these really awkward stuff. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, what is she thinking? And then I'm laughing at the same time. And I was like, just kick him out of your house. What are you doing?
Yeah. And she's a really sweet, like she's successful. She's this optometrist. She has a great family, she's got a good relationship with them. Clearly this secret thing that she's doing in the book is just, her heart's just so big it could burst. And yet I think people who have that big heart end up also being the ones that people step all over. And she gives people the benefit of the doubt. I mean, think of Jimmy and like what happened with his, just how he ended up living with her to begin with. And it was like, and she kind of fell in love with Jimmy originally, if you can say, it's always in hindsight, you're like, was I really in love with them? So she kind of got feelings for Jimmy to begin with because of how amazing he was with taking care of his mom, his sick mom. And that part I could relate to so much. Like, have you ever, like, whether reading a book or even like for me, it's like watching some TV show, like maybe the first show, you're like, I don't like this character. And maybe they're not even that much of a sexy character, but then all these good and amazing things come out about them. And then you're like, you're falling in love with them. And it has nothing to do with what they look like. It's just, they're super kind, So for her, she's like, Jimmy's this guy who takes care of his mom. And then he just flips. And I've had that experience, not romantically, but just in relationships before, where you're like, everything's great. And then you're like, who are you? It becomes embarrassing that you're like, are we associated with each other? I was like feeling her pain through the book, and just the embarrassment, because she's clearly embarrassed that she gets put into these situations. Like, she's like, I can't even tell anybody. I can't tell my best friend. I can't tell anybody because it's just embarrassing by this point. You know, the whole fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. She was definitely on that shame on me by this point.
Totally different topic about that. But how do you come up with your covers?
Oh, good grief. Lots of prayer. No, covers are I hate dealing with covers the most because it's like picking out a frame for someone's art. Like the story is my art. I actually don't usually care that much about what the frame is because like it's just the frame, right? It was somewhat easy when it was like everybody just slaps a picture of a guy with abs on there. Did I like those covers? Well, sure. If I liked the look of the guy on there, then sure, I like the cover. If it was a guy that I didn't like the looks of him, I would potentially not buy the book. And maybe it was a great story, but I just something about that guy I didn't like. So I have like a weird relationship with people on the cover. I mean, overall, personally, do I prefer it? No, but I was reading mainly traditionally published books, not even just in the romance genres. So I was rarely reading books with people on the covers. I was just getting recommendations, or I was reading a blurb, and that's how I picked up a cover. I rarely ever picked up a book before I started writing and reading more explicit romance that had anything that I cared about the cover. It didn't matter what the cover was like. So right now to be honest, I'm super frustrated with the cover issue with books. Not that it's an issue, but just I never thought it would grow into you need multiple covers for books. And I have 2 covers for this book. So I have an illustrated one that people will be able to get just through my website. I'm not putting it on anything else, but those who want an illustrated color cover. But there's the whole, this type of cover sells better on Amazon, but this other cover sells better if you wide with retailers. Well, some people love the illustrated, but some people hate the illustrated. We want people on it. No, we don't want people on it. We want objects on it. Wait, it's got sex in it, but I want to read it out in public. So now I need a completely discreet cover. So as you can imagine, and I'm like, my assistant, the cover that's on the one right now, my assistant made, and I love it. It's beautiful. It's bright. It just makes me think of a love story and like what's behind the pages. So I'm very appreciative of the people who've worked so hard on the covers for me. But on the flip side, I'm like, I don't even care about the cover. It's the book. I wrote the book. That's what I'm wanting you to read the book. I want you to focus on the cover. But I mean, how do you guys feel about covers? I'm always so curious. For readers, do you look and think, why are authors having 20 covers for one book? What is it? I mean, and honestly, I'm just curious because I think as just a reader, I would be like, why are there so many covers for this book?
Yeah, I totally agree. There are times when if I really love a book and if they keep releasing new covers, I'll be like, I need that cover. I need that cover. But at the same time, like my shelves are running out of space. And I'm like, okay, I just need one book for one cover. I don't need all of the covers. And I totally get it. Like with discrete covers, I totally get it. But at the same time, I actually don't carry a book with me. I read on my phone or on my Kindle. So I'm not going to carry a book. So I don't really need a discrete cover. Right. But at the same time, like they are pretty to look at. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm trying to save money to get more books. So I won't just be getting the same book over and over.
Yeah. Right. I love discrete covers, but I feel like I always tend to get the first one because I'm just like, well, like Pink said, it's like, okay, I'm going to get this one because I love the cover. And then like a couple months later, they're like, well, here's a discrete cover. I'm like, oh, but I already have the first one. It's like, but I like it too. But it's like, for me, it's like Pink said, I don't carry my paperback when I'm traveling or going somewhere. It's usually on my phone and in my Kindle. So it's more of but if the covers are so like, if you love the book and both covers are so cute, I'm just like, it doesn't hurt to have both of them.
Just hurts your pocketbook is all. Yeah. And I know I've seen some people comment, and I don't want to make a blanket statement speaking for all authors because I'm sure there are exceptions. Most authors aren't changing up their covers as for like a money-making marketing thing as well. Not in the sense that they're not trying to sell the same book 3 times to you. It's more of hey, this cover does great on Kindle Unlimited, but if you go wide, this cover does well on iBooks, but if you are selling signed books or whatever, maybe this cover does better. So it's like our goal is then like, oh gosh, so we need to try to appeal to different audiences, and therefore we have 2 or 3 covers for some book. But then when I started doing it with a few of my books, which I haven't done with a lot, I didn't, even when I just would update a cover and just have it look a little more fresh and relevant or whatever, I never imagined at that time that readers who already purchased the other cover were going to want the second cover as well. I'm like, oh, which makes me then kind of question having too many covers, because I don't want to put somebody in a position where like, well, now I want other covers. And I get emails all the time like, do you have the original covers to this book or that book or that series? And then I'm like, well, let me go in my basement down there. Maybe not. So yeah, the covers right now, I could just like pull my hair out. It's like the most stressful part of writing right now is the cover.
Which one has been your favorite cover so far though? From like, even like from your original covers, not like special editions or discrete covers, which one has been your favorite?
Oh, wow. That's super hard. I think it's super hard for me because my stories are so different. It's not like I'm just comparing a bunch of mafia romance covers, or you know what I mean? Like they're all over the place that way. Like I love the kind of wickedness of the Life series because it's kind of a creepy covers a little bit, but the storyline kind of goes there. I love For Lucy, the cover on there is just to me, just such a beautiful cover. And I feel like in the end, the story is a very beautiful story, even if tragic. What Lovers Do, I love it just because it's so bright. Like at home, I have it like sitting on my shelves while I had ordered a bunch in to like send out for stuff. And all this pink, it's just so bright, like sitting up on my wall. God, I don't know. It's like when Life Happened, the girl on there, and just so whimsical. And then knowing Parker's character in that book, I just thought it was very fitting for that. But I don't have one. And isn't it funny? I'm like, most of them aren't like, they're not like ads. I don't have a lot of ads on my covers. The Transcend Duet, what I love about that is there's people on the covers, but they're people, you can tell it's actually, if the cover is of a photograph of this person. And what I love about that is that those 2 covers, the pictures on them are very relevant to the story. So it's not just a random cover of just some person or couple that are representative of, oh, it's a romance story. It's like you read those books and then you are like, oh, that's the cover. They're talking about the picture on the cover. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, what do you guys like on covers? Or does it just depend on what the genre or subgenre that you're reading?
I'm actually not a type who like abs on covers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I prefer, if he's in a suit, then I prefer a guy with a suit, but I don't really pick up books. Like I love ab covers, obviously I do, but at the same time, I prefer them in suit. I don't know. Yeah.
Like I personally like a cover for your book for Lucy. I love that cover. And it's more because I guess once you finish reading the book, you kind of go back to the cover and you're like, that cover fits the story. Right. And it's like very intriguing to where the less you get, I think, in a cover, the more intriguing you are to read the story. So I'm more of that type of cover or object type of person.
Yeah. I like that that kind of thought, because I'm the same way too. It's cool when you go back in the cover, you're like, oh, that was kind of a perfect cover for the book. But I mean, even like with What Lovers Do, he gives her these flowers that are these bright pink flowers. So there's this connection. But I'm like the same way with the abs and stuff. Like I think early on in reading the genre, I was like gobbling up abs too, just because some of them were super great. And I'm like, well, these are great. But ultimately, it's like now I'm like, I don't know if I see one more set of abs. Look the part. Like I purchased that photo just to cut off the guy's head because I liked him in that suit. And it was so insane to pay for an exclusive photo to chop off most of his head. But I love the cover of Look the Part because you can tell it's like this sexy guy in a suit, but yet you don't see his face. You can kind of make of whatever you think he looks like above. And it's so fitting for Flint and his tie and all of that. So yeah, I like the suit covers too. I'm like, okay. I mean, it's funny. So my sister now, my sister is single again and dating. And so she'll send me pictures of guys she's seen on these like dating apps. She's younger than me, but she's like, will send me pictures, which I'm like, gosh, do you have to have an ab picture on dating apps? I mean, I'm pretty happily married, so I'm not on dating apps, but I'm like, wow, everyone, you have to have an ab shot. Is that the case? And I'm just find myself like, I'm like, why am I freaked out by that? Like, it's different than a book cover. I'm like, is that how you're catching people? Is she just laughs, of course. She's got this great body and probably her ab pictures up there. But there's probably about a month ago, she sent me a picture of a guy on there and he was dressed in a 3-piece suit. And I'm like, that's the one. Never met him. He lives too far away. I don't think they're going to work out. But I was like, he looks so like, if I were single, I would be like, that's the guy I'm going to date, because it's like leaving something to the imagination. In his 3-piece suit. And I don't know whether she was thinking, I want to see his abs, but I was like, that's fun.
So how do you come up with titles for your book?
Oh dear. At the past few years, I've been a struggle because I actually come up with a title before I write the book. When I first started writing, I wrote the book and then I titled it after reading the book. And I liked that. Like people who don't name their child until they see their child instead of like, it's going to be Frank regardless. But it's like, sometimes I want it to relate to the story, something specific about the story. Sometimes I want it to just be an overall feeling of the story. Like What Lovers Do was titled before. Okay, What Lovers Do has had several titles. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were that we even originally used. One was, I think the first title of What Lovers Do was going to be Shake It Off, because it was kind of like a cute like reference to the dogs and everything too. But from a marketing standpoint, if you put certain words in book titles, they do sometimes do better. So if you had the word love, lovers in a book, they're just going to do better regardless of what's on there. Naked Love, you put the word naked in a book, also it's going to convey romance. So that was another thing for me. It's like also depends on the cover. Like if my cover doesn't scream romance, I want my title to make you think romance. Or if it's a very personal book, like For Lucy is a very emotional personal book, so I wanted the name to be in there. If like, especially if a character is like super not just like clearly character, but like everything about the story somehow revolves around the character, or there's something really great about him, like Jersey 6. So I don't have any definite way that I title every book. It's just all over the place and what kind of feeling I'm going for. Or like if with a rom-com, I'm like, what do I label this that we can have kind of like a neutral cover, but people still know that's a romance. And that's why we changed it from Shake It Off to What Lovers Do.
Well, I totally think that the title matches the story. So,
oh, yay. Well, and then it's fun. Okay, so fun fact too. When I started writing books, I don't know when I stopped doing it. I'd have to go back and see. I originally, my first 4, 5, 6, I'd have to go back and see. I used to finish every book. The last line at the end of the epilogue was the title of the book. I always managed to wrap the title into the story and have it be the very last words the epilogue. It is in my Holding You series. It is in Undeniably You. It is in Idle Bloom. So I don't do that anymore, but I love it when I can have the title definitely have a meaning, like Transcendent Epic. They talk about transcending time and epic and what it means. And then What Lovers Do, there's a reference to the title in the book. So I actually, that is a thing that I do. Yeah, that's my thing.
That from all the characters that you've written so far, who would you say is your favorite hero?
My favorite hero. Oh, that's so unfair. I would say what I would call my most romantic hero. It's going to be a tie. So here's my tie, because they're just so great for different reasons. So Luke Jones in my Jack and Jill series, I think because it was a 3-book series, and Luke just went through everything for the woman he loved, and the fact that the woman he loved was not easy to love. He's always been a big favorite of mine, just because that series is a favorite of mine. But in For Lucy, Emmett stole my heart at least 10 million times over, because really, has there been anybody who's shown love the way that he showed love, like all enduring, like what he did for the love of his family, for the love of his wife. He truly was like, if you love something, let them go. And that's what he did with his wife. I mean, Emmett just like, Emmett broke my heart so many times in that book. So those two. And it's funny, and neither one of them, what I say, are my sexiest heroes. Like, they weren't really written to be that sexy. I mean, Luke Jones is like this stuffy psychiatrist that irons 𝐅𝐸𝐥𝐥𝐿 socks. But it was just like, he tamed the woman, like he was the woman who probably thought she would never find anybody, and it was the toughest woman I've ever written. And yet she found like the man that she wanted to be her fairy tale. And so I think that is, I find men sexy and strong for different reasons than what I think a lot of romance readers too. Like, my idea probably of an alpha male is much different than others. And so, yeah, I mean, what do you guys like in, see, I'm picking your brain now. What do you guys like in characters? Who are your favorite alpha or characters?
Well, from all the books that I've read from you, like, I seriously have to say, all your heroes are like seriously swoon worthy. And like you said, they don't really come off as like the very sexy type, but the way how they treat the heroine is what really draws me to all your heroes. And I like Fisher. I love Fisher a lot. Yes, last year when you released it, he was seriously one of my top book boyfriend last year, because he was so amazing. Like, there's just something about him that really tugs at my heart. And I don't know, I love him. And I don't remember his name, but the one from A Place Without You.
Oh, Bodhi. Yeah,
yes,
Bodhi.
Him.
Bodhi too. Yeah, and I would say with both of them, what I kind of love, I think you're kind of picking characters that tend to bring out, even if they seem mean when they do it to begin with, mean, but they bring out the best in the heroine. And I think like Fisher was incredibly patient, and I felt like that was his job, was to be this patient hero who brings out the best in the heroine. And I felt that way about Bodhi. Like, Bodhi's love for him was like, I know you don't think this is good for you now, but I'm doing this because I love you. And both of those are a little bit of an age gap.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can dive into the Fisherman Duet. I'm really curious as to, how did you come up with that story?
Oh my gosh. That story was the most chaotic story, because it started out in Kindle Vella. I was just going to write series, like, because Kindle Vella was new, and it was just more like, well, it's new, why not try it? If it doesn't work, you publish it. And I knew that Kindle Vella was a little bit more geared toward more of a new adult audience. I knew there was definitely going to be a younger audience on there. And so I wanted to write something that was for a younger audience. And I wanted to write something that had this hero that you were really intrigued by. And I didn't really know, it was not going to be 2 books on Kindle Vella. It was just like, I was just going to write some, I mean, I had no plan with it. I was just writing, chapters and releasing them. And then when I decided that I was going to go ahead and pull it from Vella and put it out, is when I decided that this story was going to go in a different direction, and it was going to have some serious meat to the story by the second book, that I wanted something for readers to really, dig their teeth into, a plot twist that you didn't see coming. And what I loved, so for me, I very much was like, I was raised in a very religious home. I knew how it was, like everything from the purity culture to being told, what was ethically right and ethically wrong. And I was that person who wanted to break away from that. And I feel like there's probably been so many people in my life who led me there. And I knew I wanted to write a book about somebody who was just kind of crude and unapologetic about it, because sometimes I like character transformation. So I like the transformation of who Fisher was from the beginning of the first book to the end of the second book. I love who Reese went from book 1 to book 2, even though I knew I would write Reese and I knew people would hate Reese and just, oh, I hate how she is and she's judgmental, and not really realize that she is a product of something else. She's really young. She's a product of something else. And as I got towards the end of the first book, it's when kind of things start getting more serious. And I kind of let the book dive into issues that are a little more controversial. I know I had probably a fair number of readers that I don't like the end of the first book. I don't like who Reese is. I'm not going to read the second book, assuming that they knew where it was going, when where it was going was, in my mind, to one of the best character arcs I've ever created with Reese, and how she makes full come around with this. Like, I love who she is by the end of the second book. I love by the second book that she even keeps a little bit of the authenticity of her faith. Like, she doesn't totally lose her faith. She's just redefined a little bit in her mind to learn, like, what do I really think God is in my life, or what do I really think love is? And love is like being loving and accepting of everyone, no matter what. And I love the interaction that she has with Rose and Rory, and how much they teach each other. So it was the craziest story, just going from some lighthearted new adults, he's sexy, it's a forbidden romance, to we're going to tell a story about a romance that spans years. I love that there's years. I love Reese coming back as a more confident woman. Like, she knows who she is. She knows, what she believes in. I love that. And I never saw that coming. I mean, I wasn't even going to write these books. They were not on my list of books to write last year. It was just like, I'm going to slip something into Vella. And then I had to push all my other books out of the way, because I'm like, and we have a duet. We're putting it out. And I don't know if people are going to like it, but I was nervous and excited. And I was thrilled that people ended up loving the series as much as they did. I mean, it blew my mind. I'm like, I didn't see that coming. So it's very cool.
Like, I have to say, I remember when I was reading The Naked Fisherman, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it is seriously, like, I have to say, I am like Reese. I grew up like Reese. And so while reading the book, I was like, I can totally relate to this book. And so when I finished, I remember messaging you. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I am Reese, and I know that there will be people who will not like Reese. And I've seen reviews bashing Reese, but I was like, I've been in Reese's shoes. I know how she felt. So I love Reese so much. And between Reese and Fisher, I seriously have to say, Reese is my favorite character from the duet, even though I really love Fisher, because I love the growth of Reese went through the duet. And that book, I seriously cried so many times for this duet. And it's definitely amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of like you, because I was so much Reese, and it was hard for me. I think somebody, even in my Facebook spoiler group, I feel like I saw somebody post like they didn't know if they could go on to the second book. Like, they were kind of angry, didn't know. And I loved that people were jumping on and like, you have to go to the second book. Just hold on. There's like a plan, like wait for it, because it's hard when people like really don't like Reese. And the readers who are saying to themselves, I was kind of Reese, you're like, okay, clearly you would have hated me at that time. You know, that's the weird part about writing, when you connect with a character, not just as an author, but even as a reader. You guys probably know, like, if you love a character and then you see a review or you hear somebody else say, I hated that character, and you're like, well, they're kind of like me. I guess you hated me. You know, that's where that personal part comes in, that it's really hard to navigate.
Because we did talk about how people will not connect to Reese or not like Reese. While writing her story, did you ever think that, okay, maybe I should not go this route as much because there will be people who's judging the character, or you're like, no, I'm just going to put out the story?
No, I never. I mean, I'm sure some of my early on beta readers, alpha readers, probably thought it, and sometimes they would make notes about it. And as the writer, you always have the final say. But when it comes to writing, I read my books over and over again, and I do really appreciate beta feedback, especially when it comes to something where they think this could upset a reader, or somebody could take this the wrong way and be offended by it. And I do listen and take things into consideration. And it's, if it comes down to something that is like not a big deal, it's not like a big part of the character development, and it's questionable that it might offend somebody. And all of that doesn't probably get caught in people's stories either. Some things slip through that nobody caught that it would be offensive or anger somebody. But if it's something minor, it's a no-brainer. Like, you just change it, because why would you set yourself up to potentially upset somebody either about the character or about something else? But when it came to Reese, because I didn't have a Fisher in my life, but because I had been Reese and how I was raised and stuff, pulling back from that was going to feel, I don't think the story would have been what it is. I think that sometimes you have to cross that line, knowing you're going to upset a few people, lose a few readers, but knowing that in doing so, you are going to touch the hearts of other readers in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise. Because I've read stories where there's been times that I've like reading along, and I hope that an author, like, I hope they go there. I hope they don't take it safe. I hope they go there because it's going to be much more impactful in the storyline. And when they do, I'm thrilled, because those are the times that I cry. Those are the times like I just feel so much more emotional. And then sometimes they pull back, and you can tell they're pulling back, and they're trying to make the character not seem like how they intended for them to be. And it kind of, it ruins it for me. So for Reese was going to be who she was. She was going to like make the comments that she made, because again, it's like you have to read it looking at the fact that she's 18 and she's a product of how she was raised. And I was a product of how I was raised, and I am nothing. And not at my parents, it's more the church, honestly, because my parents are not even that way or anything anymore. But I look back and think of my own personal character arc in life. I am nothing like how I was raised, and I would never judge somebody for anything, but I was raised, it's so funny with religion, you know, the whole thou shalt not judge. And I was thinking, gosh, we sure judge a lot for thou shalt not judge, you know? So I don't usually hold back on some of those things, because I just think it will be a subpar book and I won't be as proud of it. But it's a hard risk to take, because I know that I had some people that were really upset with Reese, didn't read the second book. I have people who were like on ARC teams and stuff that had to like say, you know, I can't finish this because I've been upset by something that is said. And it's hard. And like I told you, it's a hard world to navigate right now with it. But you kind of keep going ahead because you're passionate. And really, I think the majority of readers want that. I think, you know, sometimes it's like the minority voice sometimes seems to be the loudest, and it makes you feel like that is a larger group than what it really is. And so like, if you go online, and I'm like, okay, you know, I don't read the reviews, but I'll look at like an overall star rating. I'm like, I'm still good. Like, out of all the reviews, clearly a big majority liked it. So you have to write to them. You don't write to the 1% at the bottom. You just can't do that.
So let's dive into what lovers do. And how was plotting that rom-com after such an emotional duet?
It was so hard, but it was so hard for two reasons. I started writing What Lovers Do before I started The Fisherman. Because I was like, I'm going to write Lovers Do. And as I go along, I'm going to just put out a few chapters in Bella of the Fisherman, right? That was the plan. And then when I decided that The Fisherman was coming out of Bella, we were going to make it 2 books. We wanted to put them out together. I had to devote all of my time to that. So I had to shelve What Lovers Do and come back to it. And I hate doing that because it is really hard to get back into a story, the frame of mind, these characters' mind. It was really, I struggled with it for a while, rewrote some of it. And then I just got really scared because I knew it was a rom-com. I knew I wanted it to be a rom-com, but I knew I was coming off the Fisherman series, and that did really well. And people were so passionate about it. And I had this discussion with my assistant, with my mom, with my publicist, with so many people. I'm like, What Lovers Do is going to bomb. And I go, not because I think it's a terrible book. I just think that my readers are going to still be on their fisherman high. And then they're going to be like, well, what is this? This is like some little lighthearted whatever that doesn't compare to The Fisherman. And it wasn't supposed to compare to The Fisherman. And I was having the conversation with Jen, my assistant, that I had watched the Yellowstone series and I loved it. So I was binge watching Yellowstone. Don't even know why I liked it. I'm like, I'm not into ranching or anything. I love this Yellowstone series. I went from Yellowstone to, I had never watched the series that is still on called This Is Us, but everyone for a while had been talking about This Is Us. And finally, I'm like, told my husband, I said, let's see what the deal is. There's a ton of seasons, so we've got lots of binging to do. So I went from Yellowstone to This Is Us. And for first couple of episodes of This Is Us, I'm like, well, this isn't as exciting. This isn't Yellowstone. This isn't any good. Once I let myself let go of what Yellowstone was and accept the fact that I was not watching Yellowstone, I am so madly in love with the This Is Us series. And I cry at almost every single episode. And my husband gets teary-eyed. I think the writer's goal was like, no matter the episode, there has to be one moment in every episode where the viewers cry. Because I have never, ever watched a series that has made me cry at almost every single episode. And now I'm looking back going, it was so stupid to be like comparing it to Yellowstone because that's truly the like apples and oranges. You can't compare it, but it was scary. It still kind of is. I still think I have a lot of people not even knowing what reaction they're supposed to have from What Lovers Do because they still are in fisherman land, especially if they like recently read Fisherman. And I'm like, but just give Shep World a try. Like Shep World is a special place too. It's just gotta give them a try. So it was really hard just from taking a break to in my own head feeling like I had something to live up to. And honestly, I think it's hard for a single book to live up to a continuous duet because you have like 2 books to get people really invested in those characters. It's hard.
And like personally for me, I feel like when I read, because it happened before, like I was very excited to read What Lovers Do when I heard it was rom-com, because it's like you come off from reading a duet that's, it makes you cry. It's very emotionally, I'm not going to say draining, but you've been in that world for some time. And once you finish that, I always seek for a rom-com. I'm like, okay, I need, a little laughter after like I shed so many tears. So going from that to What Lovers Do was very refreshing because I felt like Shep was phenomenal. Loved him. There were like the stuff he would say and do. I'm just like, what's wrong with you? And I was like cracking up. But it's like it's very different going from, the Fisherman Duet to this. But I do think that it is a breather to get something different and new.
Yeah. And I feel that way as a writer. That's why my books are all over the place. You can tell, oh, this was lighter. This was, lighter. Oh, wow. This one's got murder and somebody dies, like all of this. I mean, because I'm going from What Lovers Do to 2 more books, writing 2 more books in my life series, which is going to involve a serial killer. So that's how I write as well. I'm the same way. So I'm like, I need something different. I can't just do heavy the whole time. But then after a while, if you've had enough romantic comedies, you're like, okay, I want something really gritty.
Yeah.
So I get it. Yeah, we're totally alike on that one.
And for What Lovers Do, have you played golf before? Because I've never read a book that included golf in it. So this was very new, and it's not a sport that I'm driven to. I don't know why. Like, I've passed, like, when we go to the store here, there's always like a golf range. So it's like you see it. And my sister's really into sports. And I'm like, we should go to a golf watching. I was like, no, like that's no. But so reading it was very intriguing. Like, do you know about that sport, or did you have to do research about it?
No, sadly, I know about the sport to some degree. I don't watch it myself. And it's funny because my assistant, Jen, I was first like, we should put golf clubs and stuff on the cover. And she's like, no. She goes, I'm just letting you know. Her husband loves golf. She's like, I hate golf. She goes, I wouldn't even read the blurb to it if it had anything to do with golf. Okay. But she loved the story. She's like, she goes, people would miss out on a great story if you like push the golf thing. I'm like, okay, I didn't realize there was that to it. I learned to play golf when I was pretty young. I think I was like middle school. So I'd have been like, I don't know, 12, 13. I played golf with my mom and dad. One summer I took golf lessons and did like a golf tournament. I won the golf tournament, and I'm not that great. There was just only like 4 people.
You still won.
I know. I was like, how many were there? It's like, there were 4. And like one of them probably had a broken arm or something. But I don't know. Right. I'm not a great golfer, but I learned how to play, and I know enough about the game. I don't watch it, but I just from playing when I was younger. And I mean, I've gone to like the driving range with my husband and stuff like that. I mean, I have golf clubs. I don't use them, but I haven't golfed like myself other than the driving range. I probably haven't golfed in 15, 20 years. I mean, I'm 47, so it's not like I'm since in my adulthood, but I don't love the sport. I honestly don't love the sport, but I know that a lot of the people who do are pretty passionate about it. And this was set in, of course, Arizona, where they do. I've been to the top golf that they are at. I've been, a friend of mine who lives out there, she like took us by the top golf area, and we ate at a restaurant and everything new there. So it was like very real to me because I had been there, and she's telling me about it. And I know people have done the top golf. And yeah, I mean, I've got family. My husband sometimes plays. My brother and dad have loved playing golf. My dad played like in high school. That was one of the sports he did back in high school. So like I said, I'm not like proud of the fact that I know so much. And I don't even want to say know so much, but I know things about golf. And I wanted golf to be part of the book in the sense that it was something that really they had in common, and how it brings out I used it as a tool to bring out their competitive nature in each other. But I didn't want anybody to feel like, oh my gosh, this is just pages and pages and pages of golf. So like they're on the course and doing stuff, but it's not, I hope it wasn't like too extreme that people who don't like golf are like, enough with the golf.
It was enough to like I said, I'm not a golf person, but it was very intriguing and interesting to read about, because I'm just like, well, this is new. Like, it's something totally different, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. I was like,
I'm glad you did.
I loved when they were competing, and he was like, okay, if I win, then we get to have sex. I totally thought he was going to win. Poor
I was like, there's no way he's going to win. I love that. I loved creating this character. Well, that's what I kind of like in Jack and Jill series, about Jack and Jill series with Jessica. I like when the woman is just something a little bit stronger. So I loved Sophie, that she was just a little bit better than him at it. I loved that it opened his vulnerability to show a little bit of his male ego being crushed. But then I love when they play golf with his dad and his dad's wife at the end. I liked letting Shep, like as they talked, be on top in the sense they're a little bit like he's gotten under the whole getting under each other's skin. So golf, like I said, was a tool for that because that's what they did competitively. But
I have to say at times, because Sophie was too nice that at times I was like, oh my gosh, please don't be nice. But she has such a big heart that you can't really be mad at her.
right.
And I've like Jimmy, oh my gosh, Jimmy was, I want to smack Jimmy so many times. But at the, I don't want to give off too much, but that one scene when he was outside of her house,
yeah,
I feel so bad for him. Like I was like, okay, I do not like this Jimmy guy. But that one scene, seriously, you have the power of us hating one character and then us ending up liking that character at the end of the story. And
yay, that was kind of the goal with Jimmy. I was not originally. At first, I'm like, he's the character we're going to hate, and there's no reason to ever like him. But I wanted us to like, the reason I wanted us to, I guess, I don't even know if there's probably a lot of people that never actually liked him, but the reason I wanted him to not be fully hated at the end of the book is because, again, he's a little reflective of Sophie, and I want you to like Sophie. And if I wanted you to see a little bit of the Jimmy that she fell in love with, because he is a little bit, reflective of her character. And it's funny, that scene you're talking about where he's outside, my assistant, when she was beta reading, he was not outside for the whole night. And she's like, you need to make him stay outside for the whole night. I'm like, really? Even after what happened? And she's like, he has to. And I'm like, don't you think readers will think that's harsh? And she's like, it has to happen. So it was like this gamble. I'm like, so I'm having to kind of toughen Sophie up a little bit. I'm like, he's not tough like that. She's like, he has to stay out all night.
Really, I never hated him. He was annoying at times, but I guess as we like got to see more of him, I kind of felt bad for him, because it's like, okay, his mom is going through this, and it's like I feel like he's just very lost. So it was more of a like, I felt bad for him, but at the same time I'm like, get out of her house, like leave.
Yeah, he was that character. I mean, I loved bringing out tiny bits and pieces of his soft side, like when he actually did take a shower and doing some stuff around there. The part where she's like flabbergasted that he remembers her story about the garter snake. Like, he's the softer side of Jimmy, his humor, when he finally says something about getting a pool, using some money, like to get a pool, like we're going to put in a pool in here. She's thinking he's moving out, and he's kind of like, gotcha, I'm just kidding. So there's that. Okay, Jimmy's not like the worst guy, but he was clearly not for her. And I mean, I think everybody knows somebody who's kind of just like gone through a rough stage. And maybe it's for me. I have 3 boys. 2 of them are adults now, but they're young adults. And boy, I watched them struggle. I'm like, are you going to get your life together? And I've seen very firsthand kind of some Jimmy lack of motivation, and not that it doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you needy. And I think when people get needy, sometimes they can be very irrational. And I think Jimmy just kind of got really irrational. I think he sincerely loved, in his own way, loved Sophie, but just a little to the point where, like, if you really loved her, you would move out. But
there's the scene that I just couldn't stop laughing. I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm starting to like him. He's okay. And then he's like, well, I grabbed your credit card from your purse and you're showering. I was like, dude, what did you do? I take it back. Me liking you, I take it back.
Yeah, I love that, where it's just like, I'm gonna buy this, I got a job and it's here, and I received a credit card, and she's just, again, like it, and it was just like another punch to the gut for her, because she's like, kind of, she doesn't say it, but she's thinking, have I been taken advantage of again? Like, anybody else possibly take advantage of me? And it's funny, like originally Shep's character, I had, the first time writing it through, I had played up a little bit more of her concern about him potentially having a job where he didn't make a lot of money. Was he going to be like Jimmy 2.0? And that's one of these cases where like, and I liked it and I felt like it really fit her character, but that's for people who are curious how we try to go through revisions. And having the discussion with my assistant, she's like, it's a fine line, especially coming off of COVID. This is where real life comes in. She's like, you don't ever want it to come across like anything's wrong with having a minimum wage job. And it was never that, but it was how this is an example of beta readers really helping. Like I would never have meant it that way, but to know that this is a time financially for people where you never want to make it sound like a minimum wage job is a bad thing. I mean, I've got 3 boys and 2 of them don't want to go to college. And I'm just like, I just want you to have a job and be happy. But readers wouldn't know that. And so it was then really weird trying to have her character be somebody who's guarded against like being taken advantage of without her being judgmental of somebody who's not making a good living or something like that. So the storyline kind of changed as far as from her point of view. And I had to just stick with the fact that she couldn't date anybody else because she had plans. She had plans.
So just wondering, will Shep's friend, Howie, I think that was his name, will he be getting a book?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I was writing that going, I wonder if people know Howie's there. I don't know. I do like Howie. I love their banter and interaction. Like that was another thing I liked during the book. I loved when Sophie was with Jules and they were having their heart-to-heart conversation. I loved Shep with Howie and the male banter that goes back and forth. So there's no plans for Howie to have a book, but I think he's a likable enough character, especially, what he'll be coming off of a divorce, obviously. Even you could write a book about him. So I've learned to never say never.
After this one, how many books are you planning to release for 2022?
The plan is, after this one that just released, to release 3 more books. There will be another Duet in the Life series that's connected, but it'll be a standalone. You'll be able to read this next duet as its own standalone story. There's only one connecting element. We haven't set a release date, but those 2 will come out like a month apart sometime in the fall. And then I don't know for sure if it'll get done. I'm hoping to get the final book in I'm going to use that term lightly, the final book in the Jack and Jill series. So it would be kind of a true conclusion after Out of Love. So what really happens with Jackson and Livy and Slade and stuff like that. I would love to see that come out before the end of the year. So having 2 stories or 3 books more total coming out, but we'll see. You never know when life is gonna stand in the way. That's the goal.
Okay, so before we let you go, we love doing this. We call it "How well do you know your books?"
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna.
We pick 6 quotes from books that you've released. So read a quote and then you can guess.
Go for it. I will get 0 out of 6. Hey, I tell you, I read people like put my quotes on teasers, like from older books, especially, and I don't realize it's from my book. And there's like, well, that's a great quote. And then I'm like, did I say that? I mean, that's what I've written 28 books. This isn't fair, but go ahead. All right.
I felt like a leaf falling from a tree, and he was the wind whispering, "I've got you."
Gee whiz. Was that Transcend?
No. Do you want to give it another try?
Was it Look the Part? All right. What was it?
End of Day.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Gosh. Okay.
The next one.
Am I the only author who's missed this? Have other authors missed their quotes?
They missed like 1 or 2.
Oh gosh, I'll miss them all.
The second one. That's how you know you're living. If your heart's not racing, if your teeth aren't chattering, then you're not doing it right. Do you want a little hint?
Is it Jersey City?
No.
Oh my gosh. You're gonna start, they're gonna be like, she has a ghostwriter. She doesn't even know the books. I have no clue. I don't know. What is it?
We did mention it on the podcast today, besides Jersey 6.
Besides Jersey 6. Oh, was it A Place Without You?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was my next guess. Oh my gosh. So bad.
Okay, now this one is more recent, so maybe you remember this.
Go for it.
The thing that scared me more than absolutely anything in the world was that he wasn't mine.
The Fisherman Series.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Funny thing though, I'll tell you quickly about this is I told you I was writing What Lovers Do, and then I was going back and forth between the books. When I went back to What Lovers Do, Fisher was in that book. I was using Fisher's name. That tells you how my brain works. I'm like, oh my god, I've inserted these characters in the wrong book. Anyway, all right, next one.
We don't like hearing anyone put down the people we love, no matter how much they've hurt us.
Undeniably You?
No.
For that book.
This
well,
one
reward for getting 0 out of 0. I wanted the reward for that.
We also talked about it we did talk a little bit about it on today's podcast too.
If it's from What Lovers Do, then I'm retiring.
It's from For Lucy.
Okay. If I can remember the most recent book. That is so crazy. Yeah.
Okay, now this one, you have to get this one.
Don't say that. Why'd you do that? You just used it.
Okay. Crawl under my skin. It will never be close enough.
Crawl under my skin. It will never be close. Well, that has to be What Lovers Do.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was when they were visiting her parents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, that one's kind of fresh in my head.
Okay, the last one. It doesn't matter if anyone has ever missed you before, because I will miss you enough to last a lifetime.
That one's Jersey 6.
Yes.
Yes, I do remember that. Poor Jersey never felt that before. All right, so I got 2.
Well, that's good enough.
I wrote 2 of those books. Clearly, you won't see me out there catching people plagiarizing any of my stuff anytime soon. I'm like, did I really write that? Oh my god, it's insane. I mean, my husband and I one time had a talk. He goes, "Could you title all of your books in order?" And I'm like, I don't know, like probably, but I really have to stop and think about it. But think about authors who have like 50 to 100 books. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Jewel, for joining us today, and especially on a Saturday. So thank you so much. I have so much fun talking to you about your books.
It's been fun. Thank both of you for having me. I was kind of excited when I found out that it was the 2 of you that were doing. Like, oh, I would love to. So sometimes I talk with people who've actually never read any of my books, and so it's always a weird thing. So like, I know them. We can do this. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and we're so excited for everything that's have planned for this year. We're so excited. And can I just say, I loved What Lovers Do. So thank you for the laughs. It was actually, I loved it. And we hope you have an amazing weekend.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Love Jewel Ian. I love her books. love her. She's so sweet. She's so funny. And I'm so excited for everything that's to come this year. I love this interview. And like we mentioned earlier, like we've been wanting to talk to her and have her in our podcast for like ever.
Yeah.
So it finally happened and I'm so excited. I love her. And if you guys have not picked up What Lovers Do, please pick it up. It's seriously it's coming from someone who does not pick up rom-coms. Like it's phenomenal. I loved it. Like pick it up. Like it's that book that like you could put yourself in that situation and it's like you enjoy it 100 times more. So definitely pick it up and be on the lookout for what's to come this year. I'm excited for that murder suspense book that she has. In case you missed our announcement over the weekend, we are going to be interviewing Bromberg next. Love her. I love her. We were wanting to have her in last year, but things got a little bit busy with her. Plus, field release, so that was a little bit hectic. But we are finally able to get her back on here and talk to her about Last Resort. Love that book, y'all. Love it. And it's exciting. So I'm dying to talk to her. I love her. I love Christy. If you guys have any other questions for us, just let us know and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.